On Wednesday, Bahram wore a turquoise robe and went to the turquoise palace. At night, as was the custom, he asked the lady of the palace to tell him a story. The lady, with a gentle smile, began her tale. Long ago, in the land of Egypt, there lived a man named Mahan. He was kind but fond of pleasure. One day, a friend invited him to a garden, and from morning until night, they drank and indulged in merriment. When the feast ended, Mahan, now drunk, made his way home. As he walked through the alleys, a man appeared in the distance and approached him. The man said, "Do you recognize me? I am an old friend of yours." Mahan, still dazed from his intoxication, looked at him with uncertainty and replied, "I do not remember you. How did you find me, and what do you want?" The man smiled and said, "I have traveled far tonight just to see you. I have made a great trade and brought a cargo full of profit, but I fear the tax collectors, so I have kept it outside the city. If you help me bring it in unnoticed, I will share the wealth with you." Mahan, excited by the prospect of fortune, followed the man without knowing who he was or what was truly happening. They left the city together. After walking for a long time, Mahan grew uneasy and said, "We have traveled far and still haven't arrived. Are we going the right way?" The man replied, "Just follow me and ask no questions. I know the way." They continued their journey until they found a place to rest. Mahan, exhausted, fell asleep. When he awoke the next morning, the man had vanished. Mahan found himself in a barren desert, surrounded by thorns and dry bushes. There was no water, no people, not even animals. He looked around and saw caves, dark and ominous. That night, exhausted, he collapsed near one of the caves and fell asleep. But he was startled awake by a sound. When he opened his eyes, he saw a man and a woman, each carrying a bundle of firewood on their shoulders, walking toward him. The man approached Mahan and asked, "Who are you, and where have you come from?" Mahan recounted his tale of foolishness and misfortune. The man sighed and said, "This land where you are trapped has no escape. It is the domain of demons, and the man who brought you here is a fiend named Hale. He has deceived and trapped countless souls before you. But do not despair, we are your friends. Trust us and come with us." With no other choice, Mahan followed them. But as soon as the sun rose, they vanished, and he was alone once again, facing an endless desert filled with hills and valleys. Mahan wandered all day. When night fell, exhausted and hopeless, he took refuge in a cave and fell asleep. But in the middle of the night, he was awakened by a sound. He opened his eyes and saw a man on horseback approaching him. The rider's voice was stern as he demanded, "Tell me who you are, traveler. What is your story? If you lie, I will cut off your head with my sword." Mahan, fearing for his life, spoke the truth. After hearing his tale, the rider said, "You should be grateful that you have reached a safe place. Now that you are with me, the demons can no longer harm you. The two who claim to be your friends are, in fact, two dangerous fiends, Hyla, the woman, and Gyla, the man. Their purpose is to deceive and destroy humans." Then the rider said, "Quick, get on my horse. I will take you away from this cursed land and lead you to an eternal paradise." Mahan mounted his horse and rode forward for a while, but suddenly demons and devils surrounded him from all sides. They shouted in terrifying voices, "Mahan, come to us, come to us." Their voices grew louder and more frightening with each passing moment. Mahan looked around in fear and suddenly realized he was no longer on his horse. Instead, he found himself riding on the back of a giant dragon that breathed fire from its mouth. The dragon moved wildly from side to side, and Mahan, terrified, clung tightly to its body. At dawn, the dragon threw him to the ground and vanished. Exhausted and overwhelmed with fear, Mahan lost consciousness. When he awoke, he found himself in a vast, dry desert scorched by the sun. He started walking and, after some time, came across ruins in the middle of the desert. Afraid of the demons, he took shelter there and rested for a while. When he opened his eyes, he saw a light shining from behind the door of the ruins. He walked toward it, opened the door, and suddenly stepped from the dark, abandoned ruins into a lush and beautiful garden, filled with fruit trees and fragrant flowers. Overjoyed, he picked a fruit and took a bite. Suddenly, a voice shouted, "Catch the thief!" An old man with a staff emerged from between the trees and said, "Who are you to be picking fruit from my garden?" Mahan, shaken with fear, finally managed to speak and told the old man about all the strange and terrifying things that had happened to him. The old man calmed down and kindly said, "Thank God you escaped from those wicked creatures and found your way here." Mahan asked, "What is the secret of this desert?" The old man replied, "This is a cursed land, full of people as deceitful as demons. They lure travelers with lies and lead them to their ruin. But truth always prevails." Then he smiled and said, "I live alone in this garden. I have no wife or children. If you wish, you may stay with me." Mahan accepted his offer. The old man said, "I will go and bring you some supplies. But until I return, sit on this tree branch. Do not climb down under any circumstances, and do not speak to anyone." Mahan sat on the branch and waited. But after a while, a dazzling light appeared in the distance, and a group of beautiful women emerged from between the trees. They began to dance and sing, setting a lavish table filled with food. Then they kissed each other's lips and caressed each other's bodies. One of them, with long hair and enchanting eyes, approached Mahan and spoke in a soft voice, "Come down and join our celebration." Mahan was tempted. He climbed down from the tree and took the woman's hand. The other women offered him wine, and Mahan drank. He became intoxicated, removed his clothes, took one of the women in his arms, and kissed her. But when he opened his eyes, the beautiful woman was gone. In her place stood a terrifying, demonic creature with curved horns. In a cold, eerie voice it said, "You kissed me, so why stop now? The lips are the same. Give me your kiss." Mahan recoiled in horror, but the creature advanced toward him. He screamed, but it was useless. The demon leaned over him and burned his face with fiery kisses. As the sun rose, the demon vanished, and Mahan found himself once again in the barren desert. With regret, he whispered to himself, "How many things appear beautiful and tempting on the outside, yet beneath the surface, they are full of darkness and ugliness." He then collapsed to the ground, begged God for forgiveness, and sincerely repented. At that moment, a bright light appeared, and a man with a radiant face stood before him. The man said, "I am your pure heart, Mahan. I have come to help you." He took Mahan's hand and led him to a garden. Mahan opened the door and found himself in the same garden of his old friend, the very same garden he had left when he first fell for the demon's deception and pursued false promises. Now, he had returned the right way and was once again among his friends. From that day on, he spoke only the truth and stayed away from greed and temptation.